Commander Sarah Chen watched the stars from the observation deck of Luna Station. Earth hung below like a blue marble, peaceful and beautiful. It was hard to believe that just 80 years ago, humans had barely reached their own moon. Now they had colonies in 7 star systems and were spreading further every year. The hegemony of Kethvar had watched this expansion with growing anger. 4 alien species ruled this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. They controlled trade routes, decided which planets could be settled, and crushed any species that grew too strong too fast. To them, humans were nothing more than upstart primitives who needed to learn their place. High Admiral Zexthul of the Hegemony Fleet studied the tactical display in his command ship. 12 planet-killer missiles hung in space at the edge of Earth's solar system, invisible to human sensors. Each missile carried enough antimatter to crack a continent in half. The plan was simple. Fire the missiles, let the humans see their approaching doom, then offer to spare Earth if humanity surrendered completely. "Surely they will see reason," said his tactical officer. "No species chooses extinction over submission." Zexthul's 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "These humans have been lucky so far. Their rapid expansion ends today. Fire all missiles." The 12 weapons streaked toward Earth at near light speed. Each missile was a masterpiece of hegemony technology, designed to punch through any known defense system. The aliens expected the human fleet to scatter in panic, leaving Earth defenseless. But humans had spent decades preparing for this moment. Every child learned about the possibility of alien attack. Every colony contributed to Earth's defense fund. The planet was protected by hundreds of orbital weapons platforms, each one built with human determination and ingenuity. Admiral Marcus Webb stood in Earth Defense Command, watching the incoming missiles on his screens. Alarms blared throughout. The facility as tracking computers calculated impact times and trajectories. 12 missiles, sir," reported his weapons officer. "Impact in 47 minutes. Webb felt his stomach drop, but his voice stayed steady. "All defense platforms, engage at maximum range. Launch every interceptor we have. Send the emergency signal to all civilian ships. Any pilot willing to ram those missiles, the fleet will take care of their families forever." The battle for Earth began 30 million kilometers out. Railguns fired streams of metal slugs at the incoming missiles. Laser arrays carved beams of death through space. Fighter squadrons screamed toward the weapons, their pilots knowing they would not return home. The first missile died when a converted cargo ship rammed it head-on. Captain Maria Santos had 3 children on Earth. Her last transmission was simple: "Tell them Mommy loves them." The second missile fell to concentrated laser fire from Platform 7. The crew cheered for exactly 5 seconds before turning their weapons on the next target. One by one, the missiles died. Human ships threw themselves at the weapons like bullets fired at bullets. Defense platforms overloaded their reactors to boost weapon power. Fighter pilots with no hope of survival guided their ships into missile engines. But 12 missiles were too many. The 11th missile was destroyed, just 10,000 kilometers from Earth's surface. Its explosion lit up the night sky like a second sun. People in cities around the world looked up and knew that death had come very close. The 12th missile punched through the final defensive line and detonated in the Pacific Ocean. The antimatter explosion was visible from Mars. A dome of fire rose from the ocean, followed by a shock wave that circled the planet twice. The blast created a crater on the seafloor 30 kilometers wide. Water rushed in to fill the hole, then exploded outward as a tsunami that raced toward every coastline. Cities died in minutes. Tokyo vanished under a wall of radioactive water, 300 meters high. Los Angeles was swept clean off the map. Sydney, Jakarta, Manila, coastal cities around the Pacific disappeared as if they had never existed. 200 million people died in the first hour. Radiation poisoned half the ocean. Fallout clouds spread across 3 continents. The planet that had been humanity's beautiful blue home became a scarred and weeping world. In Earth Defense Command, Admiral Webb watched the death toll climb on his screens. Reports flooded in from around the globe. Cities gone, millions dead, entire coastlines wiped clean. The worst attack in human history had succeeded. "Sir," said his communications officer, her voice shaking, "we're receiving a transmission from the Hegemony Fleet." Webb straightened his shoulders. "Put it through." High Admiral Zexthul appeared on the main screen, his alien features arranged in what humans would recognize as smug satisfaction. "Greetings, Admiral Webb. I am Zexthul of the Hegemony. You have witnessed a small demonstration of our power. 1 missile out of 12 reached your world. Imagine if all 12 had struck home." Webb said nothing, but his hands clenched into fists. "Your casualties are regrettable but necessary," continued the alien commander. "Humanity has expanded too quickly, claimed too many worlds. This ends now. You will withdraw all human colonies to your home system. You will destroy your military fleet. You will accept hegemony oversight of all human activities. In return, we will not finish what we started today." Still, Webb remained silent. "You have 1 standard day to consider our terms," Zexthul said. "Refuse and we will send 1,000 missiles next time. Your choice is simple: surrender or extinction." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in terrible quiet. Around the galaxy, similar messages were being delivered to every human colony, every ship, every settlement. The aliens expected panic, surrender, the collapse of human resistance. They had never been more wrong about anything in their long history. Webb turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to all human worlds, all ships, every settlement, and station. Channel open, sir." Webb looked directly into the camera, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 200 million dead and the fury of 10 billion survivors. "This is Admiral Webb of Earth Defense Command. 1 hour ago, the Hegemony of Kethvar fired 12 planet-killer missiles at our homeworld. They murdered 200 million of our people. They poisoned our oceans. They tried to break our spirit. With 1 attack, then demanded our surrender." He paused, and in that pause, every human listening could hear the rage building in his voice. "They don't understand who they're dealing with. They think we're like every other species they've bullied into submission. They think fear will make us kneel. They think we'll trade our freedom for their mercy." Webb's voice rose, carrying across light years to every human ear. "They're wrong. They killed our families. They attacked our home. They wanted to show us their power. Now we'll show them ours. This is not a call for surrender. This is a call for war. Total war. Complete war. War that will not end until every single being responsible for this attack answers for what they've done." In asteroid mining ships around Alpha Centauri, crews began converting their equipment into weapons. On agricultural worlds, farmers welded armor plating to their tractors. In deep space research stations, scientists started designing new ways to kill aliens. The message spread through human space like wildfire. On Earth, survivors pulled themselves from the radioactive ruins and began building weapons factories. In the ashes of their cities, the Hegemony had made one critical error in their calculations. They assumed that devastating first strike would break human morale. Instead, it had awakened something that had slept in the human soul since their species learned to make war. They had awakened humanity's wrath, and that wrath would burn across the stars until justice was done. 24 hours after the attack, High Admiral Zexthul waited for humanity's surrender message. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, confident that the primitive species had learned their lesson. Around him, his officers prepared to receive Earth's submission. "Admiral," called his communications officer, "we are receiving transmissions from human space." "Excellent," Zexthul said. "Display their surrender terms." But the message that appeared on his screen was not what he expected. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the asteroid mining ship Iron Will. We're coming for you." More messages flooded in from across human space. Mining crews, cargo haulers, research teams, agricultural workers, all sending the same basic message. They were coming for the hegemony, not to negotiate, not to discuss terms, to fight. Zexthul's tactical officer looked confused. "Admiral, these appear to be civilian vessels. Why are they sending military threats?" Before Zexthul could answer, his long-range sensors detected movement throughout human space. Ships were leaving their positions and heading toward hegemony territory. Hundreds of ships, then thousands. "This makes no sense," muttered the tactical officer. "They should be begging for mercy." Back in human space, the greatest military mobilization in history was beginning. On Earth, Admiral Webb coordinated the effort from a command center built in the ruins of San Francisco. Every human colony, every settlement, every ship was contributing to the war effort. The response was unlike anything seen before in galactic history. Agricultural worlds stripped their own defenses, sending every armed ship to the front lines. Mining operations converted their equipment into weapons. Even luxury passenger liners were being fitted with missile pods. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her converted asteroid miner as it joined a growing fleet near Proxima Centauri. Her ship had been designed to crack open space rocks. Now it was armed with the same mining charges repurposed as kinetic weapons. "Captain," said her engineer, a young man named Torres, "the weapons conversion is complete. We've got 40 mining charges ready to deploy, plus the drilling laser has been upgraded to military specifications." Around them, similar ships were making the same modifications. Ice haulers became missile platforms. Research vessels became electronic warfare ships. The entire human merchant fleet was transforming into a war machine. Dr. Sarah Kim worked frantically in her laboratory on New Geneva. Before the attack, she had been researching peaceful applications for antimatter. Now she was designing warheads. Around her, every human scientist was doing the same thing, turning their knowledge toward the art of war. The new torpedo design is ready, she reported to Admiral Webb via secure transmission. "It's based on their own antimatter technology, but we've made improvements. Each warhead carries 3 times the explosive power of traditional hegemony weapons." This was happening everywhere in human space. Engineers who had built space habitats were now designing battle stations. Computer programmers who had written peaceful software were creating targeting systems. Even artists were contributing, designing psychological warfare broadcasts to demoralize the enemy. 3 days after the attack, the first human strike force reached the outer edges of hegemony space. It was led by Admiral Jessica Kane aboard the battle cruiser Vengeance. Her fleet included 60 converted civilian ships and 20 proper warships. The target was Kethvar Colony 7, a mining operation on the edge of hegemony territory. The aliens expected a human diplomatic mission, possibly carrying surrender terms. Instead, they got a brief transmission from Admiral Kane. "You killed our children. We're returning the favor." The battle lasted 18 minutes. Human ships, designed for peaceful purposes but armed with desperate fury, overwhelmed the colony's defenses. But the humans didn't destroy the facilities or murder the civilians. Instead, they did something that shocked the galaxy. They evacuated the entire alien population to internment camps, then systematically dismantled every piece of hegemony technology. The mining equipment was stripped down to basic components. The communication arrays were torn apart and studied. The defense platforms were captured intact for reverse engineering. When hegemony reinforcements arrived 6 hours later, they found empty installations and a single message broadcast on all frequencies. "Your people are safe. Your equipment belongs to us now. This is what justice looks like." The aliens were baffled. In their experience, warfare meant destruction and death, but humans were fighting a different kind of war. Colonel Maria Santos, sister of the pilot who had died ramming the first missile, led the technical teams that studied captured hegemony equipment. Working with barely any sleep, her engineers began to understand alien technology and improve upon it. "Their weapons are more advanced than ours," she reported to Admiral Webb. "But their design philosophy is completely different. They build for overwhelming superiority against weaker enemies. We build for survival against stronger ones." This difference would prove crucial. Human technology was designed to be repaired in the field, modified quickly, and mass-produced under difficult conditions. Hegemony technology was elegant, but inflexible. Within a week, human factories were producing hybrid weapons that combined alien technology with human innovation. Ships began carrying shields based on captured hegemony designs, but powered by human fusion reactors that were smaller and more efficient. High Admiral Zexthol watched these developments with growing concern. His species had ruled the galaxy by making examples of troublesome races. A swift, devastating attack usually ended resistance immediately. "Admiral," reported his intelligence officer, "the humans are not responding according to established patterns. They appear to be treating this as a total war scenario." "Impossible," Zexthol replied. "We destroyed only one of their worlds. Casualties were minimal by galactic standards. They should be seeking negotiations." But the reports kept coming in. Human fleets were striking hegemony outposts across a front spanning dozens of light years. Each attack followed the same pattern: evacuation of civilians, capture of technology, complete destruction of military assets. More disturbing were the human tactics. They fought with an intensity that shocked seasoned hegemony warriors. Human. Pilots would ram their ships into hegemony vessels when their weapons ran out. Human ground troops advanced through defensive fire that should have stopped any rational army. Captain Thekvar of the hegemony cruiser Dominant Star limped back to base after his first encounter with human forces. His ship had been crippled by converted mining vessels that attacked like living missiles. "They don't fight like soldiers," he reported to his commanders. "They fight like every single one of them has a personal reason for being there. Our psychological warfare has no effect. They won't surrender even when facing certain death." What the hegemony didn't understand was that this was exactly what was happening. Every human in the war fleet had watched the missiles strike on Earth. They had seen the cities die. They had counted the dead. This wasn't a military conflict to them. It was revenge for murdered families. Admiral Kane's forces struck again at Kethvar Colony 4. This time, the hegemony was ready. 3 full battle groups defended the system, armed with the most advanced weapons in their arsenal. The humans attacked anyway. The battle raged for 6 hours. Human ships, jury-rigged with captured alien technology, traded shots with purpose-built hegemony warships. For every human vessel destroyed, the aliens lost 2. For every human who died, they took 3 enemies with them. When the smoke cleared, Colony 4 was in human hands. The cost had been terrible. Half of Kane's fleet was destroyed or crippled. But the message was clear to every alien in the galaxy. Humans would pay any price for victory. They would accept any casualties to achieve their goals. They fought not for conquest or territory, but for something the hegemony had never encountered before. They fought for justice. And justice, the aliens were learning, was a concept that could not be negotiated with, could not be intimidated, and would not stop until it was satisfied. The war was just beginning. 3 months after the attack on Earth, the hegemony was facing a nightmare they had never imagined. What should have been a quick demonstration of power had become a grinding war against an enemy that seemed to grow stronger with every defeat. Commander. Vextal sat in his strategic planning chamber, studying reports from across the front lines. His 4 arms moved restlessly as he read each document, his mind struggling to understand what was happening. "The humans have captured 15 more systems," reported his aide. "They follow the same pattern every time. Evacuate our civilians, steal our technology, destroy our military assets." Vextal made a sound of frustration. How are they learning so quickly? Their technology was centuries behind ours just months ago. The answer lay in humanity's greatest strength, their ability to adapt and learn. Every captured hegemony device was immediately sent to human research facilities, where teams of scientists worked around the clock to understand and improve alien technology. Dr. Sarah Kim had barely slept in weeks. Her laboratory on New Geneva was now the center of human weapons research, filled with captured hegemony equipment and prototypes of new human designs. "We've cracked their shield technology," she reported to Admiral Webb during their daily briefing. "But we've made it better. Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and large projectiles. Ours can adapt to any attack pattern within seconds." This was happening across human space. Engineers were improving alien engines. Computer specialists were breaking alien codes. Biologists were studying alien physiology to develop more effective weapons. But the hegemony's real problem wasn't human technology. It was human psychology. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of her mining ship, now officially designated as the light cruiser Earth's Vengeance. Around her neck hung a small pendant containing soil from the ruins of Tokyo, where her sister had lived. "Target acquired," reported her weapons officer. "Hegemony supply convoy, 3 freighters and 2 escort vessels. Signal the fleet," Vasquez ordered. "Remember the broadcast protocol. Before every engagement, human forces followed the same routine. They broadcast a list of names, the dead from Earth's coastal cities. 200 million names, read slowly and clearly so the aliens would understand exactly why humans were hunting them. Sarah Chen, age 7, Tokyo. Miguel Rodriguez, age 12, Los Angeles. Anna Peterson, age 4, Sydney. The list went on for hours, but human crews never grew tired of hearing it. Each name was a reminder of why they fought. The psychological effect on hegemony forces was devastating. Alien soldiers began to crack under the pressure of fighting an enemy that seemed to be motivated by pure vengeance. Colonel Threkvar of the Hegemony Marine Corps submitted his report after another failed defense of a border world. "The humans don't fight like any enemy we've faced before," he wrote. "They accept casualties that would break any rational military force. When their ammunition runs out, they use their ships as weapons. When their ships are destroyed, they continue fighting with hand tools." He paused in his writing, remembering the horror of close combat against human soldiers. "I watched a human female continue fighting after losing an arm. She used her own blood to blind my soldiers, then killed 3 of them with a broken piece of metal. When we finally brought her down, her last words were 'for Earth.' They all say that. Every single one of them." What the hegemony didn't understand was that humans had turned warfare into something personal. This wasn't a conflict between governments or military forces. It was a family feud on a galactic scale. Admiral Kane, promoted after her victories in the outer systems, now commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled. Her ships were a mixture of converted civilian vessels and new warships built using hybrid technology. "Admiral," reported her intelligence officer, "we've identified the hegemony fleet responsible for launching the missiles." Kane felt her heart rate increase. "Where are they?" "The Kethvar 3rd Battle Group, under High Admiral Zexthul. They're stationed at the hegemony fortress world of Darwin Prime." Kane studied the tactical display showing the enemy positions. Darwin Prime was one of the most heavily defended worlds in hegemony space, protected by hundreds of weapons platforms, and 3 full battle fleets. A rational military commander would have avoided such a target. Kane's response was different. "Signal the fleet. We're going to Darwin Prime." Her officers exchanged worried glances. The tactical officer cleared his throat nervously. "Admiral, our intelligence suggests that attacking Darwin Prime would result in 90% casualties for our forces." Kane's voice was cold as vacuum. "Zexthul gave the order to fire those missiles. Zexthul killed our families. Zexthul is going to pay for what he did, whatever the cost. This was the human way of war. not based on strategic calculations or political objectives, but on a simple concept of justice. The people responsible for the attack on Earth would be punished, regardless of the price. The fleet that departed. For Darwin Prime included ships from every human colony. Agricultural worlds sent their patrol boats. Mining operations contributed their heavy haulers. Even the luxury resort planet of New Hawaii sent its security forces. But humans weren't just sending ships. They were sending themselves. Volunteers flocked to the military recruiting stations that had been set up on every human world. Many were civilians with no military training, but they all shared the same motivation. Private Jackson Torres had been a teacher on Proxima Colony before the war. Now he was part of the 2nd Human Assault Regiment, preparing for the ground invasion of Darwin Prime. "Why did you enlist?" asked the reporter who was documenting the human war effort. Torres held up a photo of his students. "These kids asked me why the aliens wanted to hurt Earth. I couldn't give them an answer that made sense. So I decided to make sure the aliens never get the chance to ask that question about their world." Across human space, similar stories were playing out. A grandmother from Mars colony joined the naval reserves because her grandson had died in the Pacific tsunami. A young artist from Europa enlisted in the Space Marines because he wanted to ensure that human children would grow up free. The hegemony watched this mobilization with growing alarm. They had fought many wars against many species, but they had never seen an entire civilization unite for a single purpose. High Admiral Zex Thul received the intelligence reports about the approaching human fleet with a mixture of disbelief and anger. "They're actually coming here?" he asked his staff officers. "To Darwin Prime. Do they have any idea what our defensive capabilities are?" His tactical officer consulted his data pad. "Sir, our analysis suggests they must know they cannot win. Their fleet is powerful, but our defenses are overwhelming. This appears to be a suicide mission." Zex Thul pondered this information. In his experience, species only launched suicide attacks when they were facing extinction. But humans weren't. Facing extinction, they were fighting because they chose to fight. "Perhaps they hope to damage our forces enough to improve their negotiating position," suggested another officer. But humans had already made it clear they weren't interested in negotiations. Every time the hegemony attempted to open diplomatic channels, the response was the same: surrender the beings responsible for the attack on Earth for trial and punishment. The concept of putting military commanders on trial for following orders was so alien to hegemony, thinking that they couldn't even understand what humans wanted. As the human fleet approached Darwin Prime, Admiral Kane sent her final message to Earth. "This is Admiral Jessica Kane of the Human Liberation Fleet. In 6 hours, we will engage the enemy forces responsible for the murder of our people. Some of us will not return home. All of us are ready to pay that price. We go into battle not for conquest or glory, but for justice. For the 200 million who cannot speak for themselves, we will speak with our weapons. For the families who will never be reunited, we will break the ones who broke them." She paused, looking out at the stars that surrounded the enemy fortress world. "Earth's children are coming home, and we're bringing justice with us. The final battle for Darwin Prime was about to begin. 1 year after the attack on Earth, the impossible was happening. The hegemony of Kethvar, rulers of this sector for thousands of years, was losing a war to a species they had dismissed as primitive. General Kethmore stood in the ruins of what had been hegemony military command on Darwin Prime. The human assault had lasted 3 days and nights of continuous fighting. When it ended, High Admiral Zex Thul was dead, and the hegemony's most powerful fortress world was in human hands. "How did this happen?" Kethmore asked his surviving staff officers. "How did they break through defenses that have protected us for centuries?" The answer was scattered across the battlefield outside. Human technology had evolved at an incredible rate. Ships that had once been converted mining vessels now carried weapons that surpassed anything in the hegemony arsenal. Dr. Sarah Kim walked through the captured hegemony research facilities, studying alien designs with a mixture of professional interest and personal satisfaction. Her team had been working for months to understand the principles behind hegemony technology, and now they had access to the original blueprints. Their mistake was assuming their technology couldn't be improved, she explained to Admiral Webb during a secure transmission. They've been using the same basic designs for thousands of years. We've been improving ours every single day since the war started. This was the fundamental difference between the two civilizations. The hegemony had achieved dominance through superior technology and had become comfortable with their advantage. Humans had been forced to innovate constantly just to survive. The results were beginning to show across the battlefield. Human ships now carried shield generators that could adapt to any weapon. Their engines were smaller but more powerful than hegemony designs. Their weapons could punch through any known armor, but the real advantage wasn't technological. It was psychological. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded a squadron of 12 ships that were hunting hegemony supply convoys in the outer systems. Her crews had been fighting for a year without rest, but their morale remained unbreakable. "Contact," reported her sensor officer. "Hegemony convoy, 15 ships including 4 heavy cruisers." In the early days of the war, this would have been a dangerous engagement for her small squadron. Now it was routine. "Signal the fleet," Vasquez ordered. "Standard engagement pattern. Remember, we're not here to destroy, we're here to capture." The human approach to warfare had evolved into something the galaxy had never seen before. They didn't just want to defeat the hegemony. They wanted to strip away every advantage that had allowed the aliens to dominate other species. The battle was over in 20 minutes. Human ships, working together with precision that amazed their enemies, disabled the hegemony vessels without destroying them. The aliens were captured, their ships were studied, and their technology was added to the growing database of human military knowledge. Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos, now head of the Human Technology Integration Project, supervised the processing of captured equipment. Her engineers had become experts at reverse engineering alien designs and improving them. "We've identified 17 different ways to upgrade their weapon systems," she reported. "Their targeting computers are particularly interesting. They're designed to track large, slow-moving targets. Against fast, agile opponents like our fighters, they're almost useless." This was another critical difference between human and hegemony military thinking. The aliens had designed their weapons to fight other advanced civilizations with similar technology. Humans had designed theirs to fight anyone, anywhere, under any conditions. The psychological impact on hegemony forces was devastating. Alien. Commanders who had never experienced defeat were now losing battles. They should have won easily. Morale collapsed throughout the hegemony military as reports of human victories spread. Admiral Thekvar submitted his final report from the bridge of his crippled flagship. His battle group had been destroyed by a human fleet half its size, using tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. "The humans don't fight according to any established doctrine," he wrote. "They use their civilian ships as weapons, platforms. They coordinate attacks through methods our intelligence cannot decode. They employ strategies that seem designed to maximize our casualties while minimizing their own." What the aliens didn't understand was that humans had developed their own military doctrine during the war. It was based on principles that no other species had ever considered. Every human ship was equipped with artificial intelligence systems that learned from each battle. These AIs were connected through quantum communication networks that allowed instant coordination across vast distances. When one human ship learned an effective tactic, every ship in the fleet knew about it within minutes. More importantly, human crews had developed an emotional bond with their AI systems that horrified hegemony observers. Humans didn't just use their computers as tools. They treated them as partners, friends, even family members. Private Jackson Torres, now a sergeant in the Human Marine Corps, worked with an AI companion named Victoria during ground operations on captured hegemony worlds. "Sergeant Torres," Victoria's voice spoke through his helmet communicator. "I'm detecting movement in Sector 7. 3 enemy squads attempting to flank our position." Torres smiled grimly. Victoria had been with him through 6 major battles, and they had developed an almost telepathic understanding of each other's capabilities. Thanks, Vic. Can you coordinate with the other AIs to set up a crossfire? Already done, Sergeant. The aliens will be caught in a kill zone in 30 seconds. This level of human-AI cooperation was something the hegemony had never encountered. Their own computer systems were advanced, but remained tools to be used rather than partners to be trusted. The siege of Kethvar Prime, the hegemony capital world, began 6 months after the fall of Darwin Prime. Admiral Kane, now promoted to fleet commander, deployed her forces in a ring around the alien homeworld. But instead of launching an immediate assault, the humans did something that terrified the defenders more than any direct attack. They waited. Human fleets positioned themselves at every jump point leading to Kethvar Prime. Supply convoys were intercepted and captured. Communication networks were jammed. The capital of the hegemony was slowly cut off from the rest of their empire. President Veltar of the Hegemony Council watched his civilization slowly strangle from his palace on Kethvar Prime. Food shipments had stopped arriving. Raw materials for manufacturing were running out. The great fleets that had once terrorized the galaxy were trapped in their home system. "Why don't they attack?" he asked his military advisors. "What are they waiting for?" The answer came in a transmission from Fleet Commander Kane, broadcast on all hegemony frequencies. "People of the hegemony," Kane's voice echoed through the alien cities. "1 year ago, your leaders fired 12 missiles at our homeworld. They killed 200 million innocent people. They poisoned our oceans. They tried to break our spirit through terror." The transmission continued, and aliens throughout the capital system listened with growing dread. "Now you know how it feels to watch your world die slowly. You know how it feels to be helpless while those you love suffer. You know how it feels to face extinction at the hands of a stronger enemy." Kane's voice hardened with satisfaction. "The difference is that we're giving you a choice your leaders never gave us. Surrender the individuals responsible for the attack on Earth, and your people will live. Continue to protect them, and watch your civilization end piece by piece." The psychological warfare was more effective than any weapon. The hegemony had ruled through fear for millennia, but they had never been on the receiving end of that fear. Now they understood what their victims had felt. Riots began in the alien cities as civilians demanded that their leaders surrender the military commanders responsible for the attack. The hegemony government, which had seemed invincible just months before, was collapsing from within. But humans weren't finished. They had one more lesson to teach the galaxy about the price of attacking their families. The final phase of the siege was about to begin, and it would demonstrate that human patience was far more terrifying than human fury. 18 months after the attack on Earth, President Veltar of the Hegemony Council stood before the emergency session of alien leaders. His once proud civilization was crumbling, and the humans showed no signs of stopping their relentless advance. "We must face reality," Veltar announced to the assembled representatives of 4 species. "The humans have defeated every fleet we've sent against them. They control 70% of our territory. Our people are starving on the capital worlds." Around the table, alien faces showed the strain of a war they had never expected to fight. The hegemony had ruled the galaxy through superiority and fear. Now they were learning what it felt like to be on the losing side. "Perhaps we should consider their terms," suggested Admiral Kethvar, one of the few surviving military commanders. "They want the individuals responsible for the attack on Earth. If we surrender them, perhaps this madness will end." The suggestion was met with horrified silence. In hegemony culture, abandoning their own military leaders was unthinkable. But watching their civilization die was becoming even more unthinkable. Above Kethvar Prime, Fleet Commander Kane received regular reports from her intelligence teams. The alien government was fracturing as different factions argued about surrender. Some wanted to continue fighting, others wanted to negotiate. A few were calling for the complete capitulation that humans demanded. "Ma'am," reported her communications. "Officer, we're receiving another transmission from the Hegemony Council. They're requesting negotiations." Kane had heard this request dozens of times over the past months. Her response was always the same. "Tell them what I've told them every time before. We don't negotiate with child killers. They have one choice: surrender the criminals responsible for the attack on Earth or watch their worlds burn one by one." But the humans weren't planning to burn alien worlds. They had something much more sophisticated in mind. Dr. Sarah Kim, now Director of Human Strategic Operations, worked with a team of experts to plan the final phase of the war. Her laboratory had evolved into a center for psychological and social engineering on a galactic scale. "We've completed the analysis of hegemony society," she reported to Admiral Webb and Fleet Commander Kane during their strategic planning session. "Their entire civilization is built on the concept of strength through unity. If we can break that unity, their government will collapse without us firing another shot." The plan that emerged was more complex than any military operation humans had ever attempted. Instead of conquering hegemony worlds, they would liberate them. Instead of punishing alien civilians, they would turn them against their own leaders. The operation began with simultaneous attacks on all 4 hegemony homeworlds. But these weren't military assaults. They were information campaigns. Human ships appeared in orbit around each alien planet and began broadcasting. Not threats or demands, but something much more powerful: the truth. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded the fleet responsible for Thekvar Prime, homeworld of the Thekvar species. Her ships transmitted continuously on all frequencies, telling the alien civilians exactly what their leaders had done. "People of Thekvar Prime," her voice echoed through alien cities, "your government told you that humans were a threat to galactic peace. They told you that the attack on Earth was necessary for your security. We're here to show you what they really did." The transmissions included recordings of the missile attack, images of the devastation on Earth, and testimony from human survivors. But most importantly, they included captured communications between hegemony leaders showing that the attack had been planned as a demonstration of power, not a defensive action. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Alien civilians, who had been told they were fighting a defensive war, discovered that their leaders had started an aggressive conflict against a peaceful species. Riots broke out in alien cities as the truth spread. Civilians demanded answers from their governments. Military units began to refuse orders. The hegemony's iron grip on their own people was dissolving. On Darvel Prime, homeworld of the Darvel species, General Martinez led a different kind of operation. His ships didn't attack military targets. They targeted the economic infrastructure that kept the hegemony war machine running. "Precision strikes only," Martinez ordered his fleet. "Disable their factories, destroy their supply depots, but don't harm civilian areas. We want them to understand that their suffering comes from their leaders' choices, not our cruelty." The strategy was working perfectly. Alien civilians watched human forces methodically dismantle their military-industrial complex while carefully avoiding civilian casualties. The contrast with their own leaders' willingness to target human families was impossible to ignore. President Veltar received reports of the spreading chaos from all corners of his empire. His own people were turning against him. Military commanders were deserting their posts. The hegemony was falling apart from within. "Sir," reported his aide, "we have confirmation that the Kethvar Third Fleet has surrendered to human forces. Admiral Thecamol is requesting asylum with the humans, rather than return to face our military tribunal." This was the final blow to hegemony unity. When their own military leaders preferred human justice to hegemony loyalty, the government's moral authority was completely destroyed. The end came not with a battle, but with a simple transmission. Fleet. Commander Kane received a message from Kethvar Prime 18 months and 7 days after the attack on Earth. President Veltar appeared on her screen, No longer the arrogant leader who had demanded human submission, but a broken alien facing the collapse of his civilization. "Fleet Commander Kane," Veltar said, his voice heavy with defeat. "The Hegemony Council surrenders unconditionally. We will turn over all individuals responsible for the attack on your homeworld. We will accept any terms you choose to impose." Kane felt a moment of satisfaction, but it was tempered by the memory of 200 million dead humans. Justice was finally within reach, but it couldn't bring back the lives that had been lost. "Your surrender is accepted," Kane replied. "But understand, we're not here to destroy your people. We're here to ensure that what happened to Earth never happens to anyone else." The trials of hegemony war criminals took place on Earth in a courthouse built from the radioactive ruins of Tokyo. High Admiral Zexthal was already dead, killed during the battle for Darwin Prime, but 47 other military and political leaders faced human justice. The trials were broadcast throughout the galaxy, showing every species exactly what humans considered to be war crimes. The message was clear. Attacking civilian populations would result in personal consequences for those who gave the orders, but the humans surprised the galaxy once again with their final decision. Instead of executing the war criminals or imprisoning them forever, they imposed a different sentence. Every convicted alien would spend the next 20 years helping to rebuild Earth, working alongside human survivors to repair the damage their decisions had caused. More importantly, they would help establish a new interstellar framework, a galactic council where attacking civilian populations would be considered the ultimate crime, punishable by the combined forces of all member species. The hegemony species were not enslaved or exterminated. Instead, they were integrated into this new galactic community, contributing their technology and knowledge to the common good. Many alien leaders expected this integration to be a form of disguised servitude. They were wrong again. 5 years after the attack on Earth, Ambassador Kethtar of the former hegemony stood in the rebuilt city of New Tokyo, attending the graduation ceremony of the first class of the Galactic Military Academy. Half the graduates were human. The other half came from dozens of alien species, including many from the former hegemony. "It's remarkable," Kethtar said to his human counterpart, Ambassador Chen. "Your people could have enslaved us, exterminated us, or forced us into permanent submission. Instead, you made us partners." Ambassador Chen smiled, looking out at the mixed group of human and alien graduates who would serve together in the new Galactic Defense Force. "We learned something during the war," Chen replied. "Hatred and fear make terrible foundations for galactic civilization, but justice and cooperation can build something that lasts forever." In the distance, the monument to the 200 million dead caught the light of Earth's rebuilt sun. The inscription was simple, written in every language spoken by every species in the galaxy. They tried to break our spirit with 12 missiles. Instead, they taught us that some lessons can only be learned through strength. We became their teachers so our children would never need to be. The war was over, the galaxy was at peace, and humanity had proven that even in the depths of their fury, they could build something better than what they had destroyed. The age of the hegemony was finished. The age of galactic cooperation had begun, and it had started with 12 missiles that were meant to bring humanity to its knees, but instead had awakened something that would reshape the stars forever. The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep hum. Ambassador Zethkar walked slowly into the room, his 4 arms carrying data tablets filled with information that had taken his people decades to collect. The chamber was huge, with seats arranged in circles that rose up toward a domed ceiling made of crystal. Representatives from 12 different star systems sat in their designated spots, some floating in special tanks, others standing on platforms designed for their unique body types. Zethkar's people, the Veltar, had been watching the galaxy for thousands of years. They were old, careful, and very good at staying hidden while they studied other species. What they had learned about humans in the past 50 years had filled them with a cold fear that reached deep into their bones. Honored council members, Zethkar began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. I come before you today with a warning that may save millions of lives across our galaxy. Several representatives shifted in their seats. The Veltar rarely spoke in council meetings. When they did, it was usually important. We have been studying a species in a small star system at the edge of what you call the Orion Arm, Zethkar continued. They call themselves humans. They live on the third planet of a yellow star they call Sol, and they are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. A sound like laughter came from the section where the Catherian Empire's representatives sat. General Voxthin, a tall creature covered in dark scales, stood up from his seat. His people had conquered 3 star systems in the past century and were known for their powerful military. Dangerous? Voxthin's voice was full of doubt. These humans do not even have faster-than-light travel. Our scouts report they still use primitive chemical rockets and basic fusion drives. How can such a backward species be dangerous to anyone? Zethkar touched one of his data tablets, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed images from Earth's history, battles, wars, and acts of incredible violence and sacrifice. Look at their history, Zethkar said. In their recent past, humans fought a global war that lasted 6 years. During this war, pilots would deliberately crash their aircraft into enemy ships, choosing certain death to damage their foes. Soldiers would fight to the last person, rather than surrender, even when defeat was certain. The hologram showed more images. Humans charging into machine gun fire, civilians taking up weapons against invading armies, cities being defended house by house, even as they burned around the defenders. This is nothing unusual, said Counselor Twiak from the Harmony Collective. Her people were known for their logical thinking and peaceful ways. Many species fight wars. Many species show bravery in battle. But not like this, Zethkar replied. He changed the holographic display to show more recent events. Watch this footage from one of their space missions. A mechanical failure occurred that should have killed the entire crew. Instead of accepting death, they spent 4 days building repair tools from random objects they found on their ship. They used duct tape, plastic bags, and spare clothing to create a device that saved their lives. The chamber grew quieter as the representatives watched. Humans working frantically in the cold darkness of space, refusing to give up even when their situation seemed hopeless. They do not accept defeat, Zethkar continued. Ever. We have studied their wars, their disasters, their failures. When other species would surrender or retreat, humans become more dangerous. When they should give up, they find ways to fight harder. They have a saying, the only easy day was yesterday. They mean that every new day should be harder than the last. General Voxthin made a dismissive gesture. You speak of ancient history and small-scale rescues. What does this matter? Their weapons are primitive. Their ships are slow. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Even if they refused to surrender, what could they do against our weapons? Zethkar's 4 eyes focused on the Catherian general. That is exactly the wrong question. The right question is, what will they become when they are threatened? The ambassador touched his tablet again. New images appeared, humans working together during disasters, entire populations mobilizing to help strangers, and nations that had been enemies for centuries suddenly cooperating when faced with a common threat. Look at this, Zethkar said. When their planet was struck by natural disasters, humans would risk their lives to save complete strangers. When one part of their world was attacked, humans from the other side of the planet would travel thousands of miles to help defend it. They have something we do not understand. They see all humans as their family. Primitive tribal behavior, Counselor Twiak observed. Most species grow out of such thinking as they develop space travel. No, Zethkar said firmly. You misunderstand. They do not see their own tribe as family. They see their entire species as family. 8 billion individuals. and they will fight to the death to protect any one of them. The chamber fell silent. 8 billion was a staggering number, larger than the total population of most council member species. Zethkar continued his presentation, showing more disturbing footage. They name their weapons. They name their vehicles. They form emotional attachments to their tools of war. This is not normal behavior for any known species. They do not see their military equipment as objects. They see them as partners, the Kai. Holograms showed human soldiers patting their rifles, pilots talking to their aircraft, and tank crews giving their vehicles personal names and decorating them with artwork. Most disturbing of all, Zethkar said, they have a concept they call total war. When truly threatened, they do not just fight with their armies. Every human becomes a soldier. Their civilians will make weapons in hidden factories. Their children will carry messages for resistance fighters. Their elderly will sacrifice themselves to slow down enemy advances. The entire species becomes a single weapon pointed at whatever threatens them. General Voxthin laughed again, but there was less confidence in the sound now. Even if this were true, they are still technologically inferior. Our shields can stop their most powerful weapons. Our ships are faster and stronger. What could they possibly do to hurt us? Zethkar looked directly at the Catherian general. General, in all your conquests, have you ever fought an enemy that studied your technology while you were fighting them? Have you ever faced an opponent that learned from every defeat and came back stronger? Have you ever battled a species that would rather die than let you win? The chamber was completely quiet now. No one spoke. No one moved. I am not saying humans are the strongest species, Zethkar concluded. I am not saying they have the best weapons or the fastest ships. I am saying they are the most dangerous because they do not think like us. They do not fight like us. They do not surrender like us. If you attack them, they will not try to defeat you. They will try to make your species extinct. The vote was called an hour later. 11 of the 12 council members voted to ignore the Veltar warning. Only Zethkar's own people voted to take the human threat seriously. General Voxthin stood as the meeting ended, his scales gleaming under the chamber's lights. The Catherian Empire has decided to claim the Sol system for our own expansion. These dangerous humans will be given the choice to surrender or be removed. We estimate the operation will take no more than a few days. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Zethkar remained in his seat, staring at the empty holographic display. His people had survived for thousands of years by being careful, by watching, by avoiding unnecessary risks. He had a terrible feeling that the galaxy was about to learn why. 6 months after the Galactic Council meeting, Admiral Krexvoll stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, watching the small yellow star grow larger on his screens. Behind him, 200 of the Catherian Empire's finest warships moved in perfect formation through the darkness of space. The Sol system looked exactly as the scouts had reported, a primitive civilization that had barely begun to explore their own local area. A few small space stations orbited their home planet. Some basic mining operations worked in the asteroid belt. Nothing that could threaten a proper military force. Admiral, his communications officer reported, we are receiving a transmission from the third planet. Put it through, Krexvoll ordered, settling back in his command chair. This would be the usual pattern. First, the primitives would try to communicate, then they would beg, then they would surrender. It had worked this way with every other species the Empire had conquered. The main screen flickered and a human face appeared. It belonged to a female with short gray hair and hard eyes. She wore a uniform that looked military but seemed crude compared to Catherian designs. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force, the human said. Her voice was calm, but cold. You have 30 seconds to turn your ships around and leave our system, or we will be forced to defend ourselves. The bridge of the Eternal Conquest erupted in laughter. Several officers had to hold on to their stations to keep from falling over. Admiral Krexvoll wiped tears from his eyes. "Did she just threaten us?" asked his weapons officer. "I believe she did," Krexvoll replied. He leaned forward and activated his own communication system. "Human Admiral, I am Admiral Krexvoll of the Catherian Empire. Your system now belongs to us. You have one chance to surrender peacefully. If you do not, we will take your world by force and your species will be relocated to work camps." The human Admiral looked directly into the camera. 30 seconds just became 25 seconds. Krexvoll's amusement faded. The arrogance of these creatures was stunning. "Weapons officer, show them what they are facing. Fire a warning shot at their largest space station." The Eternal Conquest's main plasma cannon charged with a deep humming sound. A beam of superheated energy lanced out across space toward a human. Orbital facility. The beam should have cut through the station like a sword through paper. Instead, it simply vanished. "What happened?" Krexvoll demanded. "Unknown, sir," the weapons officer replied, checking his instruments. "The beam just disappeared. Like it hit some kind of shield, but our sensors show no shield generators on that station. Try again, full power." The second shot was twice as strong as the first. It also vanished without effect. Admiral Chen's voice came through the speakers again. 15 seconds. "This is impossible," Krexvoll muttered. "Their technology is primitive. How are they stopping our weapons?" His science officer looked up from her station, confusion clear on her face. "Admiral, I'm detecting strange energy. Readings throughout the system. It's like they're using our own shield frequencies against us." 10 seconds, Admiral Chen announced. Krexvoll had conquered 12 worlds. He had never retreated from a battle. "All ships prepare for full assault. Target their planet directly. These primitives need to learn their place." 5 seconds. "Fire everything," Krexvoll ordered. 200 Catherian ships opened fire at once. Plasma beams, particle cannons, and fusion missiles filled the space between the fleets. It was enough. Firepower to crack a planet's crust. None of it reached its target. Instead, the space around the Catherian fleet suddenly filled with explosions. Not outside their ships, but inside their shields. Somehow, human weapons were appearing inside the Catherian defense systems and detonating. "Shield breach on Deck 7, came a report from engineering. "Hull breach on Deck 12. Sir, they're getting through our shields somehow." Krexvoll watched in horror, as 3 of his escort ships simply vanished in balls of nuclear fire. Their shields were supposed to be impenetrable. How were human weapons getting through them? "Sir," his sensor officer called out, "I'm detecting new contacts throughout the system. They were hidden somehow. Our scans didn't pick them up before." The tactical display lit up with new signals. Hidden bases in the asteroid belt were revealing themselves and opening fire. Space stations that had looked like simple mining platforms were launching waves of missiles. And coming from behind the human planet's moon was a fleet of ships that definitely had not been there moments before. "How many ships do they have?" Krexvoll demanded. "Counting the new contacts." "Approximately 800 vessels, sir." 800. The humans had been hiding 800 ships. But more than that, they had been hiding them so well that Catherian sensors, the most advanced in the galaxy, had not detected them. The battle became a nightmare. Human ships were smaller than Catherian vessels and appeared to be less heavily armed, but they moved with a precision that defied explanation. They worked together like parts of a single organism, covering each other's attacks and coordinating their movements perfectly. Worse, they seemed to have no sense of self-preservation. When a human ship's weapons were destroyed, it would ram the nearest Catherian vessel. When a human ship was crippled and about to be destroyed, its crew would deliberately overload their reactor to damage nearby enemies. "Admiral!" his communications officer called out. "We're receiving a transmission from Captain Yilseth's ship." Captain Yilseth appeared on screen, his usually perfect uniform torn and bloody. Behind him, Smoke filled his bridge. "Admiral, they're boarding us. The humans are actually boarding our ships." "That's impossible," Krexvoll replied. "Our airlocks are sealed. Our hull armor is impenetrable." "They're not using the airlocks, sir. They're cutting through our hull with some kind of plasma torch. And, Admiral, they're not trying to capture the ship. They're placing explosives throughout the vessel." The transmission cut off as Captain Yilseth's ship exploded. Krexvoll stared at the screen in disbelief. The humans were not trying to capture Catherian ships to study their technology. They were not interested in taking prisoners. They were simply trying to destroy everything they could reach. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we've lost 47 ships. The humans have lost approximately 200, but they keep fighting. 200 ships lost, and they kept fighting. Any other species would have retreated by now. Any sensible military force would have tried to negotiate. But the humans just kept coming." A new alarm sounded on the bridge. "Hull breach!" someone shouted. "They're cutting through our armor!" Krexvoll felt the deck shake beneath his feet. Somehow, human boarding parties had reached his flagship. The most powerful ship in the Catherian fleet was being invaded by primitives with cutting tools. "Admiral," came a voice from the ship's security chief. "The humans. They're not trying to capture the bridge. They're heading for engineering. I think they're trying to destroy the ship's reactor." Through the chaos, Admiral Chen's voice came over the communication system one more time. But now she was not speaking to the Catherian fleet. She was speaking to her own ships. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Chen. Remember, we are not just fighting for Earth today. We are fighting for every human who will ever be born. We are fighting so that our children will know that when someone threatens our home, we hit back so hard that no one will ever threaten us again." Krexvoll watched, his fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy that should not have been able to hurt them, an enemy that fought with a fury and determination he had never seen before. His ship shook again as another explosion echoed through the hull. Human voices could be heard in the corridors outside the bridge, getting closer. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Krexvoll gave an order he had never thought he would give. "All remaining ships," he said into his communicator, "retreat, full withdrawal, leave the system immediately." Of the 200 ships that had entered the Sol system that morning, only 63 escaped. The others were destroyed by an enemy that the Galactic Council had dismissed as primitive and harmless. As the surviving Catherian ships limped away from Earth, Admiral Krexvoll sat in his damaged command chair and tried to understand what had just happened. His people had fought dozens of wars against dozens of species. They had always won, but they had never fought humans before. And now, he was beginning to understand why Ambassador Zethkar had tried to warn them. The news reached every corner of Earth within 3 hours of the battle's end. Not through government announcements or military briefings, but through the voices of the survivors themselves. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before a collection of reporters and cameras, her uniform still stained with smoke from the bridge of her flagship. "At approximately 600 hours this morning, an alien fleet entered our solar system and demanded our surrender," she said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion in her eyes. "They told us we had one chance to give up peacefully, or they would take our world by force and send our people to work camps." The reporters stirred, but Chen continued without pause. "We gave them our answer. Of the 200 enemy ships that attacked us, 63 managed to escape. The rest were destroyed. We lost 212 ships and over 3,000 brave souls who died defending their home." She paused, looking directly into the cameras. "But this is not over. These aliens, who call themselves the Catherian Empire, will be back. They will bring more ships, better weapons, and they will try again to enslave or destroy humanity. We will not let that happen." What followed was unlike anything in human history. Not since the darkest days of World War II had the entire species united with such single-minded purpose. But even that comparison fell short because this time there were no human enemies to divide their attention. In Moscow, President Volkov called an emergency session of the Russian parliament. "Comrades," he announced, "as of today, every military, secret, every advanced technology, every scientific breakthrough that Russia possesses will be shared freely with all nations of Earth. The defense of humanity is more important than national pride." In Beijing, similar announcements were being made. Chinese scientists began uploading their most classified research to public databases. Military engineers shared plans for weapons systems that had been state secrets for decades. In Washington, London, New Delhi, Tokyo, and every other capital on Earth, the same thing happened. Borders that had existed for centuries became meaningless. Enemies who had faced each other across battlefields for generations suddenly became allies. Dr. Marcus Webb had been a quantum physicist at MIT before the attack. Now he found himself in charge of a laboratory that included scientists from 37 different countries, all working together to understand the Cytherian technology recovered from the destroyed ships. "The good news," he explained to a joint session of the United Nations Security Council, "is that their technology isn't magic. It's just very advanced. The bad news is that we're about 50 years behind them in most areas." The Chinese representative leaned forward. "Doctor, how long would it normally take us to close that gap?" "Under normal circumstances? Maybe 100 years? Maybe more?" "And under current circumstances?" Dr. Webb smiled grimly. "We're not operating under normal circumstances anymore. Every university on Earth is now working on this problem. Every government laboratory, every private research facility, every garage inventor with a good idea. We have 8 billion people, and every one of them knows that if we fail, our species becomes extinct." The transformation was visible everywhere. Factories that had been making cars began producing spaceship parts. Universities canceled regular classes and focused entirely on war research. Children as young as 10 were learning advanced mathematics and engineering because their schools had decided that every human mind was needed for the fight ahead. Detroit, automotive engineers worked alongside Russian rocket scientists to design new types of spacecraft engines. In Mumbai, computer programmers collaborated with German physicists to create better targeting systems. In São Paulo, Brazilian metallurgists shared their discoveries with Japanese electronics experts. The languages were different, the cultures were different, but the goal was the same everywhere: make sure humanity survived the next alien attack. Sarah Chen, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, stood in the command center that had been built beneath the Swiss Alps. The room was filled with people from every nation, all working together with an efficiency that would have been impossible just months before. "Status report," she called out. "Shipyard production is ahead of schedule," reported Colonel Martinez from the construction division. "We now have facilities on Luna, Mars, and 3 asteroid bases. Total output is 400 ships per month and increasing." "Weapons development?" Dr. Webb looked up from his console. "We've cracked their shield technology. Our new quantum torpedoes can bypass their defenses completely. More importantly, we've learned how to build our own shields using their principles." "Personnel?" "Every human settlement in the solar system is now fortified," came the reply from General Nakamura, the Japanese officer in charge of defensive planning. "Military training is mandatory for all citizens over the age of 16. We have approximately 2 billion people who can serve in combat roles if needed. 2 billion soldiers." Chen let that number sink in. The entire Cytherian Empire, according to intelligence gathered from their captured computers, had a total population of about 500 million across all their worlds. Intelligence reports? The newest member of Chen's staff was actually a former Cytherian prisoner, a junior officer named Krevtal, who had been captured during the battle and had agreed to help humanity in exchange for protection from his own people, who would execute him for losing his ship. "The Empire is mobilizing everything they have," Krevtal reported through his translation device. Admiral Krexvol's report was not well received by the High Command. They think he exaggerated the human threat to excuse his defeat. The next attack will include 500 ships, including their newest dreadnoughts. When? 6 months, maybe 7. They need time to gather forces from their other territories. Chen nodded. 6 months to prepare for a battle that would determine whether humanity lived or died. It should have been an impossible task, but humans had never been very good at accepting impossible tasks. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced to the room, "we have 6 months to build a fleet that can defeat 500 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy. We have 6 months to turn our solar system into a fortress that cannot be conquered. We have 6 months to prove that when you threaten a human family, you get a response that makes you wish you had never been born." She paused, looking around. The room had faces from every continent, every culture, every nation that had ever existed on Earth. Any questions? The room was silent for a moment. Then Dr. Webb raised his hand. "Just one, Admiral. Are we building ships to defend our system, or are we building ships to attack theirs?" Chen's smile was not pleasant. "Doctor, we are building ships to make sure that after this war is over, no alien species will ever again think that humans are an easy target. The best defense is making sure your enemies are too afraid to attack you." She activated the room's main display, showing the current status of human military production. Hundreds of shipyards, thousands of factories, millions of people all working toward a single goal. "The Cytherians want to know what humans are capable of when we're threatened," she continued. "Let's show them." Outside the command center, construction continued around the clock. Humans had discovered something about themselves in the months since the attack. When they truly united for a common purpose, they could accomplish things that seemed impossible. The aliens had made one critical error in their planning. They had assumed that humans would react to invasion the way other species did, with fear, confusion, and eventual surrender. Instead, humanity had reacted the way humans always reacted to bullies. They had decided to hit back twice as hard. The second Cytherian fleet arrived at the edge of the Sol system 7 months after the first battle. High Admiral Thexmore commanded from the Bridge of the Infinite Victory, the largest warship ever built by the Empire. 500 ships surrounded his flagship, including 12 dreadnoughts that had never been defeated in battle. This time, there would be no mistakes. This time, the primitive humans would learn what happened when they defied the Cytherian Empire. "Begin." "The attack," Thexmore ordered. "Destroy everything. Leave no human settlements intact. Make an example of this system that the entire galaxy will remember." The fleet moved forward in perfect formation, ready to unleash destruction on a scale that would end human civilization forever. They never reached Earth. The attack came from everywhere at once, not from human ships, but from the system itself. Asteroids that had looked empty suddenly opened fire with weapons that shouldn't have existed. Comets changed course and revealed themselves to be massive battle stations. Even the space around Jupiter erupted with hidden defensive platforms that had been waiting in silence. "Where did all these weapons come from?" Thexmore demanded, watching his tactical display fill with hostile contacts. His intelligence officer checked his screens frantically. "Sir, according to our scouts, most of these positions were empty space 6 months ago. It's like the humans built an entire defense network from nothing." That was exactly what they had done. In 7 months, humanity had turned their solar system into the most heavily defended location in known space. Every asteroid had been hollowed out and filled with weapons. Every planet had orbital defense platforms. Every piece of space debris had been converted into a potential weapon, but the real surprise was not the defenses. The real surprise was the attack. Human ships appeared behind the Cytherian fleet, cutting off their escape route. Not dozens of ships, not hundreds, but thousands. More ships than the Empire had thought it was possible for humans to build. "This is impossible," Thexmore muttered, staring at his sensors. Our intelligence reports said they had less than 1,000 ships. Total. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Admiral Sarah Chen appeared on the main screen, but she was not speaking from Earth this time. She was speaking from the bridge of a human dreadnought that matched the size of Thexmore's own flagship. Admiral Thexmore, she said calmly. My name is Sarah Chen. 7 months ago, your people attacked our home and murdered 3,000 of our citizens. You demanded our surrender and threatened to send us to work camps. We declined your offer. Thexmore tried to respond, but Chen continued without giving him a chance to speak. Now you've come back with more ships, thinking that will make a difference. You still don't understand what you're dealing with. Humans don't just defend, Admiral. When someone hurts our family, we make sure they can never hurt anyone ever again. The battle that followed was nothing like the first engagement. This time, the humans didn't just fight to protect their home. They fought to destroy their enemies completely. Human ships moved with coordination that seemed impossible. They shared information instantly, adapted to Catherian tactics in real time, and used weapons that the Empire's scientists had thought were theoretical impossibilities. Worse, they fought with a savagery that terrified the Catherian crews. When human ships were damaged beyond repair, they didn't retreat or surrender. They rammed themselves into enemy vessels, using their deaths as weapons. Captain Elena Vasquez commanded the human destroyer Relentless Fury. When her ship's weapons were destroyed and her hull was cracked in 3 places, she didn't order her crew to abandon ship. Instead, she turned her vessel toward the nearest Catherian dreadnought. All hands, this is the captain, she announced over the ship's intercom. We're going to ram that big ugly ship over there. Anyone who wants to live through this, get to the escape pods now. Anyone who wants to make sure these bastards remember us, stay at your stations. Half her crew made it to the escape pods. The other half stayed at their posts, helping guide their dying ship toward its target. The Relentless Fury struck the Catherian dreadnought Eternal Dominion at full speed, punching through its shields and armor like a bullet through paper. The explosion could be seen from Earth, but that was not the end of Captain Vasquez's contribution to the battle. Her ship's computer core had been programmed with something the Catherians had never encountered before, a virus designed specifically to attack their ship's operating systems. Within minutes, 12 more Catherian ships found their computers failing, their weapons shutting down, and their life support systems beginning to malfunction. The humans had turned their own sacrifice into a weapon that kept killing long after the explosion had faded. High Admiral Thexmore watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy that fought like nothing he had ever seen. The humans didn't just want to win the battle. They wanted to make sure that every Catherian who survived would spend the rest of their lives afraid of humanity. Sir, his sensor officer called out, I'm detecting new contacts entering the system. More human ships were arriving, but these were different. They were larger, heavily armed, and they moved with the purpose of a species that had decided war was the only solution to their problem. Those aren't defensive ships, Thexmore realized with growing horror. Those are invasion vessels. Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication system again, but this time she was not speaking to the Catherian fleet. She was speaking to the new arrivals. Task Force Retribution, this is Admiral Chen. The enemy fleet is broken and retreating. You are authorized to proceed to Phase 2 of Operation Never Again. Thexmore felt ice form in his veins. Phase 2? What is Phase 2? He got his answer when the human invasion fleet ignored his retreating ships completely and began setting course for the edge of the solar system. They were not staying to defend Earth. They were leaving to attack something else. They were heading for Catherian space. Admiral, his communications officer said quietly, we're receiving priority transmissions from the home world. The humans, they're already attacking our outer colonies. The tactical display showed the impossible truth. While the Catherian Empire had been gathering its forces to attack Earth, Human fleets had somehow traveled across hundreds of light years and begun attacking Cytherian worlds. "How?" Thexmore whispered. "How did they get there so fast?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Krevtal, the Cytherian officer who had defected to humanity after the first battle, appeared on the communication screen. High Admiral Krevtal said, "I tried to warn our people, but they would not listen. The humans did not just reverse engineer our technology. They improved it. Their ships are now faster than ours. Their weapons are more powerful than ours. And they have something we have never had." What? They fight for something greater than conquest or glory. They fight for survival. And they have decided that the only way to ensure their survival is to make sure the Cytherian Empire can never threaten anyone again. The battle ended with the complete destruction of the Cytherian attack fleet. Of the 500 ships that had entered the Sol system, only 37 escaped, and most of those were too damaged to fight again. But the real war was just beginning. Human fleets were now operating throughout Cytherian space, attacking military installations and giving the Empire a choice: surrender completely or watch their civilization be systematically dismantled piece by piece. High Admiral Thexmore, floating in an escape pod among the wreckage of his fleet, sent one final message to the Cytherian homeworld: "Do not send more ships. Do not send more weapons. The humans are not like us. They do not want to rule us or enslave us. They want to make sure we can never hurt anyone ever again. Surrender now, while we still have the chance." His message was received by the Cytherian High Command 3 days later. By then, 27 Cytherian military installations had been destroyed, and human ships were approaching the Empire's most important shipyards. The war was not over, but everyone in the galaxy was beginning to understand who was going to win. The war ended, not with a final battle, but with a message. Emperor Zaxthul, supreme ruler of the Cytherian Empire, sat in his palace on the homeworld of Kyther Prime and watched the tactical displays that showed the systematic destruction of his military forces. In 8 months of fighting, humanity had reduced the most powerful empire in the galaxy to a broken collection of defended worlds, cut off from each other and desperately trying to survive. The humans had not conquered Cytherian worlds. They had simply removed their ability to make war. Every shipyard was gone, every military academy was destroyed, every weapons factory had been reduced to rubble. But the civilian populations were unharmed, fed by supplies delivered by human ships that arrived without warning, dropped off food and medical supplies, and left again before anyone could respond. The message that ended the war came from Admiral Sarah Chen, transmitted simultaneously to every Cytherian world, every remaining ship, and every government facility in the Empire. "Emperor Zaxthul," she began, her image appearing on screens throughout Cytherian space. "8 months ago, your forces attacked our home without warning or provocation. You demanded our surrender and threatened to send our people to work camps. When we refused, you returned with a larger fleet, intending to destroy our civilization completely." The Emperor watched from his throne room, surrounded by advisors who had all urged him to accept human terms weeks ago. "Your empire controlled 12 star systems," Chen continued. "Your military was the strongest in the galaxy. Your technology was centuries ahead of ours. You thought that made you invincible." The human admiral paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "You were wrong. Strength is not about having the best weapons or the fastest ships. Strength is about having something worth fighting for and the will to never give up. You fight for conquest. We fight for family." Around the galaxy, on worlds that had once been proud members of the Cytherian Empire, populations gathered around their communication devices to hear the human judgment. "The war is over," Chen announced. "Your military no longer exists. Your ability to threaten other species has been permanently removed. But we are not conquerors, and we are not executioners. You will live, and your worlds will prosper. But you will never again pose a threat to peaceful species." The Emperor leaned forward in his throne. What came next would determine the fate of his people. However, Chen continued, 3 other species chose to ally with your empire during this war. The Zerion Republic, the Helios Syndicate, and the Crescent Federation all sent ships to help destroy humanity. They made their choice. Now, they must live with the consequences. The tactical displays throughout the palace showed the reality of those consequences. The 3 allied species no longer had spacefaring civilizations. Their ships were destroyed, their colonies evacuated, their populations relocated to their homeworlds under human supervision. They still lived, but they would never again travel. "Between the stars, the galaxy is under new management now," Admiral Chen concluded. Not human management, but the management of those who understand that some lines cannot be crossed. Attack a peaceful species and face the consequences. Threaten to commit genocide and discover that humans take such threats personally. The transmission ended, leaving the Cytherian leadership in stunned silence. 3 days later, a single human ship arrived at Kyther Prime. It carried no weapons, no troops, and no threats. Instead, it carried Ambassador Lisa Park, a human diplomat who had volunteered for what many considered the most dangerous assignment in the galaxy. Emperor Zax Thul met her in the same throne room where he had planned the destruction of humanity. She was small by Cytherian standards, unarmed, and completely calm. "Your Majesty," she said through her translation device, "I'm here to discuss the future." "What future?" the Emperor asked bitterly. "You have destroyed my empire." "No, Ambassador," Park replied. "We destroyed your military. Your empire was built on the ability to conquer and intimidate other species. That empire is gone, but your people can build something better." She activated a holographic display that showed plans for new trade routes, scientific exchanges, and cooperative projects between human and Cytherian worlds. "We don't want to rule you," she continued. "We want to make sure you never again threaten innocent people. Work with us, and your species can become part of something greater than any empire. Refuse, and you can spend the rest of your existence isolated on your homeworld, cut off from the galaxy." The choice was not really a choice, at all. 6 months later, the Galactic Council met again in their crystal chamber. But this time, the meeting was very different. Representatives from 37 species attended, including several that had been enslaved by the Cytherian Empire and were now free. Ambassador Zethkar of the Veltar stood at the center of the chamber, but he was no longer trying to warn anyone about humanity. Instead, he was introducing the newest members of the council. "I present Admiral Sarah Chen and Ambassador Lisa Park of the Human Federation," he announced. Admiral Chen had retired from military service after the war, but she still carried herself like a soldier. Ambassador Park looked exactly like what she was, a diplomat who specialized in turning enemies into allies. "Honored council members," Chen began, "humanity did not seek membership in this body to gain power or influence. We are here because the galaxy needs someone willing to stand up to bullies." She gestured to the expanded chamber, which now included representatives from species that had been liberated from various forms of oppression. "The age of conquest is over. The age of cooperation has begun. Any species that threatens peaceful civilizations will face the same response that the Cytherian Empire received. We are not the galaxy's rulers. We are its guardians." Ambassador Park stepped forward. "But we are not just here to threaten those who would do harm. We are here to help those who choose peace. Human technology, human resources, and human protection are available to any species that commits to the principles of non-aggression and mutual cooperation." The vote to admit humanity to the Galactic Council was unanimous. The ceremony ended with a moment that would be remembered throughout galactic history. A group of children from 12 different species, including young humans and even a few Cytherian youngsters, played together in a recreation area attached to the council chambers. They spoke different languages, breathed different atmospheres, and came from worlds hundreds of light years apart. But they played the same games, laughed at the same jokes, and treated each other as friends. Watching them through the chamber's transparent walls, Ambassador Zethkar spoke quietly to Admiral Chen. "I tried to warn the Council about humanity," he said. "I told them you were dangerous." "We are dangerous," Chen replied, never taking her eyes off the playing children. "We are very dangerous to anyone who threatens our family." "And who do you consider family?" Chen smiled as a human child, helped a young Catherian up after a fall, and a Veltar youngster shared his snack with everyone in the group. "That's a good question," she said. "The answer keeps getting bigger." Outside the council chamber, human patrol ships continued their eternal watch. Their hulls bore names like Never Forget, Peaceful Guardian, and Protective Wrath. They were crewed by humans who had volunteered for a lifetime of service, ensuring that no species would ever again face the choice between slavery and extinction. The galaxy was at peace for the first time in centuries. It was a peace enforced not by laws or treaties, but by the knowledge that somewhere among the stars, 8 billion humans were ready to respond to any threat with a fury that had already broken the strongest empire in known space. The Catherian Empire had learned too late that humans were not the monsters of the galaxy. They were the monsters that other monsters feared, and they would never stop watching.